right, so this screencast is in response to the emails I've been getting about the Wonder Years assignment. Well, here we go with this particular item. You are writing what looks like 3 essays here, but it's broken down into 2 due dates. So the first essay is going to be this section, which is the more historical section, and this will substitute your 3rd marking period essay, and then these 2 right here will substitute your 4th marking period essay. So that's kind of what you're in for here. This, again, is a pretty involved essay, so hopefully students do not take it lightly because you do have some historical content to address. And so for the most part, students have been asking me how many paragraphs is this? And yes, it looks like right here we have 15 paragraphs. And yeah, that means 15 paragraphs that just address this. The rubric may require you to have an opening and a closing. So you're going to have some understanding of the terms that are here. And what you want to do in your paragraph is you want to talk about how the show addresses the nuclear family or the culture war or the 1950s women, television. For example, I know that there's one episode where the family is making a decision about whether or not to buy a television. So you would start this particular paragraph and you would say in the first couple of sentences, give me a summary. In episode 5 of season 3, titled whatever, the family is having a debate. So you're going to give me, one sentence about what's going on in that episode. But then you need to transition. I need to know something historic, and that historical information needs to be connected to the info here. So keep that in mind because that definitely is going to be something that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for just a summary of the episodes. You have to make connections to content, and they kind of give you that example here where I use season 5 episode 3 of the Wonder Years titled The Hardware Store, which happens to be one of my favorite episodes. Anyway, that's a different issue. So here we talk about the hardware store episode and the issue in the hardware store episode. Kevin Arnold works at a hardware store, and the hardware store seems to be struggling. Why is it struggling? Because it's right there at the birth of the mall, and the shopping malls are starting to replace some of the local mom and pop stores. So I do have a source here, The Dying Breed, the American Shopping Mall, that addresses that. So notice what I'm doing here. I'm using the episode summary, and then I'm connecting it to some of the content. So that's kind of what is going on here. You need to make sure you do that. Again, you just cannot give me a summary of these episodes. The expectation is you give me the summary, but you also have some sources to back up. Notice how here I'm using this particular piece, and I am also using this piece. You are not going to get away with just giving me a summary of the episodes, so please do not do that because that definitely will become an issue. So these are the episodes that you're going to have to watch at a minimum because I think these episodes clearly address these items here. For example, the 1950s women. I know there is an episode, I do not remember which one it is, and in that particular episode, the mother is making a decision to go back to school. And the woman throughout the whole series, the mother, she seems to be taking care of the children in that 1950s American nuclear family tradition. And the episode here, again, I don't recall which one it is, but it's definitely one of the ones that are here is going to address that. So again, the expectation in the episode, you're going to tell us what happened, but then you need to make some historic connections. So let's take a look at the rubric here. So it looks like we're going to need your opening. We are going to need a thesis. And here's the section with the paragraph. So these 15 lines are references to this. So let's just say you don't really hit the culture war episode. You don't address it. What is that? That is episode, the culture war is 8. So when I go to 8, there will be a deduction, for this particular section. So for 8, you'll see a 4 if you don't correctly address it, maybe a 2 here, maybe a 4 here. So that will be the deduction from 100 if you're kind of in that area. So that would be so far 10 deductions if that's kind of where you're at with that one. So that's kind of where the rubric is. Now this section, this is not saying you need 15 paragraphs and then 15, making this 30, I'm going to be looking at your analysis of the source. So for paragraph 2, which happens to be about suburban growth, paragraph 2, I'm going to be looking at suburban growth. I'm going to be looking at it here as well as here. I'm going to be looking at, the sources that you have, as well as your analysis of those sources. So you want to start off with the suburbs, why the suburbs matter so much in this particular series. And then you need to have your sources, and you're going to have an analysis of your sources, which pretty much means you're going to be connecting your sources to the episode. Like, this series, I picked this series because I think it really gives a good indication of what life was like in the 50s, 60s, going into the early 70s for a child of the suburbs. So I want to see you make those connections with your sources as well as with the episode there. So make sure you have that. I'm still going to be looking for your flow, your format, your introduction of your sources, but there doesn't seem to be, you're not proving any particular point here. It's just really a analysis. So the thesis, you do have to have a thesis. I don't know what that thesis would be like, because I don't necessarily know what you're going to write. But will say that in the past, students, for the most part, do fairly well on this particular assignment, as long as, like I said, they give me the summary, and then they give me sources, and the sources that they've used, reinforce, some of the issues that are being addressed in that particular episode. So you just can't cite the episode and kind of go on. So if you choose to do that, I'm going to use this rubric for the third marking period essay. And then for the fourth marking period essay, you're going to have to move on to the rubric number 2. And rubric number 2 is asking you, where is it, over here, your series reflection. So this one looks like it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. And you're just answering these prompts in the paragraph. How does the show address history? So again, at this point, you would have watched some of the series. So you would, a show addresses history by referencing the Korean War in whatever particular episode. What did you learn about the 60s from the series? Like I said already, it's about suburban growth. It definitely is about racism. I would say that there really is no African American presence in the series, so that could be something that maybe tells a story of the alienation of the suburbs. What else do we learn about? We learn about the changing role of women. We learn about the hippie movement in the United States. So you're going to connect those to some episodes, and that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for. What areas did the history ignore? I kind of already addressed that. I don't think there's one episode that hints about homosexuality. So I'm asking you to identify 3 and then link item C to the alienation of the suburbs. So what exactly is the alienation of the suburbs? It's the idea that a suburb tries to operate kind of on its own, and you can remain insulated and shielded from what's going on in society. So for Kevin Arnold, we've already established that there doesn't seem to be any African American presence. That seems to be something that is outside of the suburb community. The Vietnam War does impact some of the people in the suburbs, and they address that, I believe, in episode 1, going into episode 2 with the loss of Winnie Cooper's brother. So the Vietnam War is, at that point, infiltrating the suburbs. So you want to focus on, the suburbs as being this ideal place for American citizens in the 50s and 60s to raise their family. However, your primary concern and focus seems to be about the alienation of for your suburb. What is your focus on a national scale, on a global scale? You might only focus primarily on what's going on here. In other words, the suburbs matter more than what's happening on a national state level, and you're probably definitely not concerned about any sort of global events there. So for the most part, those of you choosing to do this assignment, the next essay is a personal life connection. It's asking you these particular questions. So I don't know. The only thing I would say for fourth marking period, I have students complete this assignment by doing this series reflection as well as this personal life connection. And I've also done it where I've only asked students to just do one or the other, the personal life connection or the series. So I guess for fourth marking period, we'll kind of have to wait on that one. But if you choose to do this for the third marking period, you would focus primarily on item one, which is the reference to history. So if you have any other questions, feel free to email me and ask me. But for the most part, I'm looking for an opening, and I'm looking for your 15 paragraphs. I'm not really going to hold you too much accountable for some of those JSTOR sources because you are looking up every item here. Um, what I will say, though, is that the sources, I'm not going to accept anything from Wikipedia. I won't accept anything from any encyclopedia database, but I will accept some other sources. I don't want people trying to research through JSTOR every item that's here and really trying to get involved, because at the end, you only need one paragraph on imperialism, one paragraph on Vietnam. So when you are using some of those JSTOR sources, try to focus on just those aspects of the JSTOR source that just gives you, a brief explanation about the Vietnam War or about the nuclear family, the concept of the teenager, so on. So then again, that's something that's a little different from prior essays. And we could even see here the sources that I used. They seem to be different. The Dying Breed by Robin Lewis. Let's see. Dying. Let's see what comes up here. The American Shopping Mall. So, this source here was an article. Looks like other news people picked this up. So this could be allowed. Here you go. So there's less focus on JSTOR. There's less accountability for having a unique thesis. The downside is you have a lot of paragraphs to write, but for the most part, these are going to be more summaries that you would be writing for this section. And that's it for the 1 year's assignment. Good luck. I'm sure you'll enjoy the series.